Music Talk brings you Kelley Stoltz. He's a new dad and he's got a new record. It's called The Stylist. But before we get into The Stylist, we revisit his first album, Antique Glow.
The Third Man did a reissue of Antique Glow
right.
as well in the interim.
Right.
First, before we get to the new album, what do you when somebody does a reissue like that? How much you as an artist? How do you feel about that? Looking back at an album, is it like kind of?
I was grateful because it was my first record, and I only did 300 of, and there was always seemed to be kind of a demand for the record.
Right.
You know, the covers were hand painted; they were all different, and you know, not as an intention to make it a collectible item, but just that was cheaper. I couldn't afford to get paper ones printed, so you know, I went to my favorite record stores and the thrift stores and took old covers and painted over them, and so they kind of took on a piece of art and and it was hard to find, and it was my first thing. So anybody who's been interested in what I've done since always kind of wanted to get their hands on one, and they just weren't around. So Ben Blackwell, who's one of the owners of Third Man, played in the Dirt Bombs for many years, and is a good friend of mine, and it's been a longtime supporter of mine since that record. He's played drums for me on a tour or two. He's just done a lot for me. He, we realized that, hey, it's been 20 years since it came out, and let's do it. So I had downtime in the lockdown period where I wasn't traveling or doing much or feeling particularly creative. So it was a good time to, find the right plug to turn on hard drives from 2002 and see if I had the right connector dongles that were necessary to turn on this old technology and find stuff. And so I did the best I could. I was using an 8-track tape machine in those days, and unfortunately, I plugged it in and it was making just a terrible sound. And it was like, well, who will fix this? And I've got to get this stuff done. So I think there were probably some gems that were not unearthed that were on reels of tape. And I just unfortunately didn't have a lot of time to excavate as far as I would have liked. But the process was fun. It was interesting to hear songs that I'd forgotten about and to kind of see, what I was. I just listened to the Byrds that day, so I would try to make a jangly song, and I'd listen to Captain Beefheart that day, and so I sang a different way. It was obvious that I was still learning who I am and what to do. I still am, so it was neat to look back at yourself at 27, 28 years old when it was all just a dream. And I honestly thought at that time, this is, if I don't make anything else, I will have made one piece of an LP. And all the bands I loved, I was a record collector as a kid, so I would have mine up on the rack, just like yours and just like mine. And if nothing else happened, I had that. And that was really the goal at that time, was I just want to have a record of my own to look at the grooves and hold and, and so here we are 20 some years later, and it still sounds good. The record's good. There's of course parts like anything that you look back and go, oh, I wish I would have that lyric. I know what I'm trying to say, and I should have said it this way, or
right. Well,
you just it's over and done, and it was nice because when I sent it off to get made on record, I don't think I had it mastered. I didn't know anything about it. So
right. What does that mean?
I think that I took the reels of tape and went to my friend's studio and put them all in sequential order on another tape and sent that off. And so I remember getting the record back and thinking, gee, I really have to turn the volume knob up like twice as loud as any of the, it doesn't sound like Steely Dan. And it was like, and I don't think I got it mastered. So Mikey Young mastered it, and so I think it sounds a little better. And the packaging that they did was just great. I mean, they spared no expense and made like
Right.
10 different covers of the paintings that
Cool.
some of the ones I kept because I liked too much to sell. So they're
Right.
kind of, you never know which one you're going to get. Kind of has like a baseball card thing where they're different
Right.
art inside, and it's a double record. So there's 4 different sleeve possibilities, and has a big open windowed front, so you can kind of put your own favorite painting in the front. And so they did just a great job with that, with the
Yeah.
artwork and
So
everything.
it's not remastered; it's finally mastered.
Yes, it's the master. Yes, it's been mastered. Yes, exactly.
I like that.
Not remastered. Yeah. So, and I think Mikey did a good job, as he always does, and it kind of brings a little more
Right.
brightness to the record.
Okay.
So I was doing that, and in the spare time, as always, trying to write songs. And I think most of the Stylist album was early 2020, late 2019, early 2020, mid 2020. Um, my touring and everybody's had ended,
Right.
so I had a lot of time in the studio and kind of finished it up. And then, of course, all the supply issues and the vinyl pressing plant
Yep.
conundrum really kicked in. And for the first time, I was really affected by that in a way that, oh, this could have come out 6 months ago. It's been
Right.
ready since like June 2020. But 3 months to get the art done and everything, and then you got to send it off, and it sits for 8 months. So here we
Yep.
are, almost a year after it's been done, uh, and there it is.
So is it hard to kind of reconnect with it, or think of it as a current thing, because you've probably written a ton of other songs since then? Now I'm guessing.
Yeah, it's like I have written some, but really I finished that, and my tank was empty. I had
Right.
nothing, and for the first time in my life, I was going in the studio, and I was kind of not interested. I had a lot of like, maybe I'll never write another play. Maybe it was like Barton Fink or something. I just didn't think. I don't know. Where is it? And
Right.
I've been through this enough times to know it's a cyclical thing,
Yeah.
and you get off the the you lose your spirit for a while, and it comes back. But it was not coming back, and I think a lot of that was I had no social life. I wasn't engaged in conversation where I might pick up a line from a friend or somebody or a
Right. Right.
stranger
Right. Yeah.
and think that I can write a song about that. And so much of it is I get a lot of external lyrical ideas and things from conversation with people. So, being trapped, I mean, my partner has a lot to say, but, I've already picked all the titles out of it. So what else,
Yeah.
I had nothing. And so it was difficult in the middle, maybe about this time last year. It was really a dry spell for the first time in my life, and wondering, well, should I make some other kind of music? Have I conquered rock and roll in a 4/4
Right.
format of aping 60s and 80s bands that I liked? And have
Yep.
I done? I mean, what have I got to prove? And so that all kind of went away for a while, but it's sort of creeped back here in the last few months, and I think a lot of that is having the kid
Yep.
who was born in the end of April, and suddenly I don't have all the freedom in the world and all the time in the world, and so I go in and just kind of get to work. I have a little 3 hours where I'm allowed to go sneak off and do my stuff, and I'm just getting right to work and finishing things. I was having a hard
Yeah. Yeah.
time
Yeah.
finishing anything, and I think
Yeah.
that was all of us floating in this timeless, when's this going to end? There's no end in sight.
Yep.
And so it affected me in my own life. I just didn't have a desire to finish anything.
Right.
And so I'm kind of part of that cycle I was talking about, where you get on and get off your inspiration. Uh, I always find that I make a bunch of stuff, and while I'm doing it, I'm going, this is all shit. And,
Right.
when are the good ones going to come? And often I write a few good ones and I go back to those ones that were no good. And once it's 6 months later, you go, in the same way with the Antique Glow, I see what I'm
Right.
trying to see. Here's the lyric I meant, or this is the
Yep.
guitar part I need. And so I've been able to kind of go back and find some things from the last year that weren't so bad, and it's kind of
Cool.
got me going again. So happily, I've seemed to have fought through the block, and I'm on the other side of that.
And of course, once little Dion starts talking, there's a whole another place to get inspiration from, I'm sure.
I think so. Well, I've got her on the record screaming at one point, and she's really good at that. So I had a lyric that was conducive to a baby's cry in the back, and so she makes her first little appearance on one of the new songs.
I wonder if that was Donovan's inspiration for Goo 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 Barabba Jackal.
It must be, yeah, right. Yeah.
So now I see you've done a video for Your Name Escapes Me. So let's
Yes.
talk about that song, and we'll show a little bit of the video for the folks who are watching.
Sure. Sure. That's one of my favorite songs I've ever made. I just like a lot everything about it. I like the lyrics. I like the guitar sounds. I tried my entire life to write a song like "Video Life" by Chris Spedding that has this little kind of chorusy guitar line, and I feel like I did it with that song. It's got some major and minor. I like the mood of it. I like the message, and so I'm really happy with that. We're playing that in the new concerts here next week, and it sounds really good. And so that was an obvious choice as a first single. And I have a friend, Meryl, who lives in San Francisco, and she's a friend of mine, and her husband played drums for me for years, and she just was doing these kind of cool animations on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
And she was making them on MS Paint or some very basic thing, and I was like, wow, these are so cool, and bright and colorful, and I thought that would be a really slam dunk easy, rather than me doing another lip sync in a moody dark room on my phone and making iMovie videos as I've done in the past. I think the song deserves something good, so I think she really made a beautiful video, and very happy with it. Yeah.
Now another one I want to touch on, because I know you got referred to for Big Star and the Birds and all that, and I noticed Harry Nilsson was being mentioned, and I was listening for the Harry Nilsson, and then it finally hit me on My Island, which is the last track.
Okay.
I was like,
right.
There it is. So tell me about that one a little bit.
Why must you disappear?
Yeah, well, it's My Island. There's no mention of coconuts
Right.
or
limes.
No mention of limes. But I don't know where that song came from. I guess it's somewhere between Harry Nilsson and if you want a Pina Colada song. I mean, it's got that kind of Rupert Holmes thing going. Excuse me, and I don't know. It just came out. I have no idea. But My Island, maybe it's an environmental song about the encroaching disappearance of our beaches. Maybe it's
right.
I think sometimes music and recording was my island, and it seemed to be disappearing for a little bit with that lack of inspiration. And my island, I made so many memories there and all that, and so that might have been it. And also, my dad my dad used to have a very small little apartment or condo in the Bahamas. He had a very wealthy second wife who I
nice.
think owned it. Huh? What's
that?
Way to do
it. I said, that's the way to do it.
He had a wealthy second wife, and I think she had a little place in the Bahamas. So some of those lines about, playing with the boys in paradise, I remember running around with the kids, little Bahamian kids running around when I was young and playing and sword fighting with these big leaf branches. And also my dad and his second wife had a predilection for booze at that time. And I remember there was nothing in the refrigerator but vodka and orange juice. And I was like 7, but they did have maple syrup. So I remember all that summer drinking maple syrup on ice. And that was like close as, I could have just said, Dad, can you go buy me a couple of Cokes? But that's what was in the fridge. So there's a line in there about, drinking maple syrup on ice. And
I like that. And you mentioned Rupert Holmes in the Pina Colada song. I just realized the other day that Rupert Holmes wrote, do you know the song Timothy by the Boys? It was a hit in the early 70s.
Was he in the Buoys or he wrote it? Or
I don't know if he was in it, but he wrote the song. And it's about, going out and having cannibalism, basically.
Oh, yeah. The only top 10 cannibalism song. I actually, somebody gave me that record for my 50th birthday. So it's funny.
Nice.
Yeah.
What are they trying to tell you?
Timothy. Yeah, I don't know. But
now there's some kind of deluxe dinked edition of the record.
Dinked, yes. So Dinked is a cool thing that's a collaborative of 10 or 12 independent record stores throughout the UK, throughout Scotland and England,
right?
And they kind of band together and they like to offer an edition that's only available at these 12 stores. And they get behind it, they push it, they do advertisements, they place it, on the end cap in their store, the famous end cap where you really had to, get some payola going in the 70s to get that right in the front as you come in. So it's played a lot, and they talk about it, and they Instagram it and do all that. And they also, I think, maybe kick in a little bit financially to help get extra tracks in some format, whether it's in this case, I did a bonus double 7-inch, and I did a dinked edition for the Etc. album, the last album, that came with a bonus 12-inch of a few songs. So they always do kind of deluxe and different art to the regular version, colored vinyl variant that's different.
Right.
They try to do something musically that's, gives people a reason to buy this little limited edition. So it was 3 extra songs. One is a cover of The Fall called Wings. That's one of my favorite songs of theirs that I just recorded for the hell of it one day.
Right.
There's a song called Jacuzzi Blues that's inspired by a friend of mine's story of his jacuzzi breaking down, and I thought, what a rich man's problem that is. And
I hate when that happens.
Sounds like a funny song. Plants was a new one.
Oh yeah, the Plants.
Yeah,
I kind of like that one.
Me too. It
all about the succulents.
Yeah, it probably could have been on the proper record, but it just didn't fit. Maybe it was a little too oddball. And Steve and the Rats is one that I used to, when I was in Echo and the Bunnymen, I lived with Jez Wing, who was the keyboard player for the Bunnymen. And he would always let me stay in his apartment in Liverpool. And we found that we had a good songwriting. We could write kind of silly songs together very easily. I have about 3 or 4 people in my life that I found I can be like Ween with, and that's a real major part of my personality that I don't always get to let out when I'm being serious. So he and I wrote several funny songs, and that was one of them.
He's a real cool cat. He's a rock and roll rat. He's in He has no plan.
Steve and the Rats for us was a kind of an Eddie and the Hot Rods, or a sub Eddie, a sub band from that time. They were there, they were doing it, but they weren't good, and no one really knew about it. So I sent the song to Will Sargent from Echo and the Bunnymen, and I said, hey, could you do a voiceover where you're like, as you remembering this band, Steve and the Rats. So he put a little voiceover at the end, oh yeah, Steve and the Rats, I remember them. They were a big shit, something like that. So he's got a little voiceover on the end. And so that was from just shot back from my Liverpool days. And that was just sitting in a hard drive and was like, this song's too good, so it needs to be put out. So that was where that ended up.
Okay. Well, at least you can hear these songs on the streaming services, even if you can't get the
I think
physical
so.
song.
Yeah. So with the Dinked
I think
edition,
it showed up on something.
It did. It ended up on Spotify, and I don't know if that was the plan, but there they are. And and the 7-inch is available with the Dinked edition, and sometimes they sell out and sometimes they don't. I just don't know how that's done, but it's great because when you do the Dinked edition, you do a 400 or 500 edition, and it's like the Sub Pop Singles Club. They have enough people who are just interested in having those, yet they're guaranteed to sell out pretty much, or sell a lot. So it's great. It's just great for everybody because it spreads the word and helps with sales. And it ended up getting in the record store charts in the UK for a week, and because you've got this guaranteed sales. So it's cool. It's a cool thing.
Excellent. Sounds like it's all happening.
I mean, in its own small, modest way, it's happening,
Well, you're going to have to take the big plane trip down here sometime. Bring the whole family along.
I'd love to, Marty. I'd love to.
Do the whole thing.
I mean, I wouldn't love to, but I'd love to be there.
You'd love to get there, be here, but
once I get there, I would be so happy. Oh, man.
All righty. Well, in the meantime, have a good time over at the UK, and
thank you.
Not quite as far away. And thanks for taking time to talk to me. I really appreciate it. It's great to
and thank you for taking time to talk to me, Marty. I really appreciate it. I'm glad to see you again.